Hi everyone and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell, for another Meet the Elite Team reveal. We are midway through Game Week 22, guys, and we are looking forward to double Game Week 23. We've got Craig back in the hot seat, so let's get his thoughts. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Craig, my friend, welcome back to the channel. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Good,
think
man.
I've got a very large whiskey on the go this
Well,
evening,
we're about to
so
see. We'll see how much of that whiskey gets drunk during the course of this show. So, full disclosure, we've got Craig on after having a couple of drinks today. He might have been other ways engaged, but we've managed to persuade him to come on the show and talk to us about his Game Week 22 and Game Week 23 plans, guys. And we've gone straight into looking at how this team is doing in Game Week 22. So we are recording on Sunday night, guys. The Man City team has just been beaten by Tottenham in a 1-0 game. So the cat is amongst the pigeons there in terms of this double game week that's upcoming in Game Week 23. But Craig, talk us through your Game Week 22 team here on screen. What were the moves that led you to this, and how are you feeling like it's shaping up so far?
okay. I made two moves, and good evening, Tom. Nice talking. I made two moves coming into this one. There was nothing particularly unexpected or controversial about them. The first one was KDB to Bruno. That's worked out remarkably well.
It's worked out well, man. Good call.
Which under no circumstances did I foresee would be so fortuitous as it has been, with KDB being benched and then coming on and doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The other was a slightly trickier choice, actually. I'd originally lined up Saka to come in for Almiron. And I got convinced behind the scenes by a few of the Elite 11 guys that I should go for Udegaard compared to Saka. And it wasn't so much that I bought the statistical analysis of it, but I began also to look ahead the last few days of, now we know what's happening in 25. 25 sure. is easy. But then comes 28, and then comes what quite possibly will be the biggest game week of the season in 29, and the saving between Udegaard and Saka of, I don't know, a wee bit shy of 2 million. I thought that would come in handy.
Yeah, and it makes sense.
I don't really know. Yeah, we'll find out whether points-wise it's the right decision. I mean, I'm easy about it, but
well,
so far so
Craig.
good.
Yeah, so far so good. And I mean, last time you and I spoke, for the viewers who've been watching the series, they'll remember that you were set, like how high on Odegaard you were there. So it's not like you've picked up a poor player, is it? I mean, he's been a maestro, hasn't he, this season? There's nothing to worry about for owners, right?
Yeah, no, I either of them are completely fine. I think that I still have a nagging feeling in the back of my head that Saka is a better player, but this is FPL and not just pure football. So with that saving between them, if you can find a way to invest that saving, then I think it's worth doing.
Yeah, makes sense to me, man.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, not to stoke the hornet's nest, but we were talking off camera about the keeper situation, and people will remember from your previous video, we were going to revisit how the Ederson Kepa dynamic has played out. Look, you gave a period, and it's not finished yet, so we will temper it with that. But what are your thoughts on Ederson, call him what you will, versus Kepa, and do you think that call is going to bite you in the arse, or do you still have faith?
It has already bitten me to the bone in my arse, Tom. It's
I'm sorry, man.
We were just, as you know perfectly well, we were just doing the maths before we came on air, and it's not looking like it's going to pay off. I'd given it until 23 to pay off, so yeah. Ederson now has 2 weeks to make up 24 points on keeper.
Yeah.
And I'm really not holding my breath. I mean, obviously that hasn't paid off. It worked on paper. It worked on X points.
Sure.
But again, you know, this is FPL, and it's not X points. It's real points, and it really has cost me around, I don't know, 50,000 places. Is what
So
I
far,
guess
man,
it's
I
been.
got a
So,
good feeling this game week 23, you're going to be preaching to me and saying, Tom, if you keep the faith, this is what happens. I mean, when we get you back
and
on the show after that.
I knew he was going to score from the halfway line. It's
Well, we'll see. We'll see, man. Look, just looking at the team now, I've got a few questions. We'll look at your planned game week 23 team in a moment to see how that you're intending that shaping up. Look, obviously we've watched the Arsenal game, and Sean Dyche has worked his miracles already, and they've turned Arsenal over in his first game there. Martinelli hooked early in that game. Trossard signed in his position as well. Owners of Martinelli, what are you recommending for them strategically, Craig? They've obviously got this double or a series of great fixtures upcoming. Arsenal. Do you think it's a hold or a different piece of advice for Martinelli owners?
for me, it's a hold
Mm-hmm.
for now. Yeah, they have a double next week, and the easiest move for me would be to move. Well, one of the easiest moves would be to move Martinelli to Saka, because I feel pretty certain that Saka will play more minutes than Martinelli going forward. But it's also a use of a transfer in a period, at least between now and 25, which is very, very heavy on be very careful with your transfers.
Yeah.
The other move, which I'd penciled in, was to move Fernandez onto or back to a City midfielder.
Yeah.
I moved him from KDB, and rather against the flow, I think there was a tweet about this early in the week. I'd already penciled in Mahrez.
Mm-hmm. You had, yeah,
as my City weapon of choice for 23, and he didn't. Well, he banged it on the bar, didn't he? This evening, somebody told me.
Yeah.
But he was hooked on 59, and I need to spend some time, go back, look at
Sure.
the game, and see what he did. Unfortunately, I haven't seen it, but in my situation right now, I've got a free transfer earmarked for bringing in a City player for that double.
Mm-hmm.
I already have 3 Arsenal. Am I going to use a hit on Martinelli? No,
it doesn't feel right in a double game week, does it, Craig, at all?
No, I don't think so. And maybe he's got reduced X-Mins going forward, and I'll cross that bridge.
So that's the advice. Interesting.
As and when.
Yeah. Okay, man. Did you have any thoughts to captain Bruno Fernandes, or was it set on Rashford and you thought that was set in stone? What was the thought that went into that? Was it nailed on?
I'm a pussy. It's that simple. I did, as those who know me will know, I did play with the idea of Bruno as a captain this week for a few days.
Yeah.
There were some of the algorithms were putting his points projections after Eriksen had been injured as being almost as high as Rashford's, and that got me thinking, especially because I'd already used my triple captainship on Haaland a few weeks ago. It was like, well, I'm around the 100,000. How am I going to make a bit of ground? This is one of the easy, low-hanging fruits. At the end of the day, I just backed out and said, no, I'm not going to fight that fight.
And there's not much in it right now. I mean, obviously, they've got the second fixture with the Leeds game upcoming, right? I think it's really interesting you mentioned the projections, and obviously FantasyFootballFix.com do their own points projections, as we know. But when we had Corey on the show, he was referring to the same in terms of the set pieces that he'd be picking up in Eriksen's absence. So it's interesting that kind of backed out. And look, you've got the two of them, haven't you, Craig? But it's working out well. The game week's obviously still ongoing. You've got well covered from the Man United perspective for that upcoming game against Leeds. So I'm sure you'll pick up more points there. Anyway, let's take a little look at how you're thinking you're shaping up for game week 23. And obviously, guys, this is a Sunday night recording, so lots can change. But let's have a look at where Craig's head's at. Cool. Okay, so we've got the fixtures on screen for the players who Craig's intending to possibly have in his team, and the eyes will be, of course, on the double game week. So we know that Arsenal and Man City have got these doubles in game week 23. And just for a little look into the rest of the show, guys, we are going to look at the upcoming fixtures in terms of how FantasyFootballFix.com is rating the fixture difficulties, and we'll get Craig's thoughts on that. But Craig, talk us through this, man. So you've got great coverage for the double game weeks already. Is this, do you think, the the ideal complement of Arsenal and Man City players? If you were on a free hit, for example, do you think you'd be looking to do things differently?
If I was on a free hit, I'd be a maniac. But if I wasn't a free hit, then for sure I would be taking a different 3 from Arsenal.
Okay.
And I have honestly no idea who I would take from City.
Really difficult right now, isn't it? It feels like they're in a bit of flux.
Yeah, I mean, I just been reading Twitter before we came on air, and there's a few. I'm not a big City expert, to be completely honest, but there's a few who have been commenting that they don't often play KDB against a team which plays 5 at the back.
Okay.
I really don't know. I can't imagine that KDB stays out. I just don't know how many players he can keep dropping and losing games at the same time. So I assume that KDB comes back, but for a while I penciled in Mahrez, as I say, as my weapon for 23 because of the saving he gave me, which would allow me to spend the money in 24 and 25.
I see. Really interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean the Mahrez thing. Obviously, he's been great more recently. Obviously, he had the tough game against Tottenham today, and like you say, substituted early. But the De Bruyne one's really going to challenge people. I think they'll have a whole bunch of managers who've kept faith with him today and been disappointed by him being benched and only coming on for a blank cameo. And then you've got people like in the situation where you're in, where you've had, Bruno Fernandes already returned in the first half of the double game. It could easily return in the second, and then he has that Leeds match again to follow. What do you think, Craig? A binary situation. Do you think Bruno Fernandes for game week 23 is a hold for over a returning Kevin De Bruyne?
You've hit the nail on the head, at least in terms of where I'm at, because I have the option of going for switching Bruno back to a City player, which was my original plan.
Yeah.
Or I can move Andreas Pereira.
Okay. Yeah.
Onto Mahrez. I really don't see any other FPL options in City apart in the midfield. At City apart from KDB and Mahrez. So of course I could afford Grealish. I could afford. Who else is there?
I mean, Phil Foden was ill today, apparently, but I mean, it's such a risky punt right now, isn't it, Craig? And it's not what you elite managers recommend.
No, and I always get. I mean, we had this last season when Solskjaer was at Manchester United. I mean, it's starting just to smell a little bit of a club which isn't functioning properly.
I agree. I really do. Yeah.
Where's Foden? Cancelo, I don't care if he shagged Pep's daughter. I mean, I really don't see the reason to sell him to Bayern Munich because of some falling out when he's unquestionably, at least to my untrained eye, the best fullback in the team.
Yeah, notched an assist tonight Foden, apparently for his new club. So he's straight into form.
Okay. And then we have Foden, who's the best, probably supporting attacker at the club, who simply can't get. He can't even get on the bench, for Christ's sake.
No, like I say, Pep's claiming he was poorly, but I mean, do we believe that? I don't know. It's so weird, isn't it, Craig? We've got this double game week for, historically, over the recent seasons, the best team in the country and one of the best teams in Europe and the world. They've got a home match against Aston Villa and an away match against the title elect, in which they're obviously going to need to win to close that gap. Normally, we'd be all over travelling up, and you are still recommending or thinking of going down the travel route, but it just feels like there's something amiss, right?
Yeah, and that's what's kind of making me dance a little bit. I mean, I had 3 options, I suppose. The first one was the original plan, which was Fernandes back to KDB or to Mahrez. Mahrez was my choice. Sure. But Bruno's playing great. And I have lots of Leeds friends, and they won't thank me for it. But I mean, they're there for the taking. I mean, they're great going forward. I really hope they stay up. But they're leaky. Yeah. So I can see Manchester doing United, doing a great result both at Trafford but also at Ellen Road.
Yeah, and obviously we will have seen, won't we? We'll see the second half of game week 22 to see how that shapes up. If they put them to the sword there, I guess that will only strengthen the resolve to possibly stick with Bruno Fernandes, right?
But I mean, my third option, which I haven't given a huge amount of consideration to, after the phenomenal success of my Edison move, is to go for a second defender.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could theoretically move on Bueno, who was benched
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
this weekend
Yeah.
from Wolves,
Mm-hmm.
to if you put a gun to my head and threaten to hurt my kids, then I would probably choose Ake, or however we pronounce his name. But I'm feeling remarkably unenthusiastic about City defenders. So I think if you go there, it's going to be for the midfield and really the defensive options, especially one game against Arsenal.
Yeah.
I'm just not feeling the love.
No, nor am I. No, and I imagine the other elite managers, when we check out their thoughts over on the blog on the website, will be offering their views, and I suspect I'll be reading similar from them as well. I mean, looking at the rest of the defence set up there, so Newcastle finally conceded a goal. Of course, it was down to the mighty West Ham to show every other team how that's achieved. Of course, but you're set well there with Trippier, who's been incredible, as we say every week, and Botman, I think, is still to lose for them as well. So right now you've got them starting ahead of Shaw. Any temptation to throw Luke in after his picked up an assist in this game? United have been defending well too, or do you think the Newcastle double up is the way to go with Bournemouth being so toothless?
I mean, Shaw, I can just hear the voice of Corby Baker in the back of my head. But his expected assists is not particularly high. No. I mean, he's easy on the eye, but statistically, he's not going to start putting in assists every week, and he's really, really overperforming that part of his game. So, straight up, I went to the algorithm.
Yeah.
And asked them to help me out on the points projections between Shaw and Botman, and it was like, I think 0.6 EV between Shaw and Botman. Yeah. So fine, I'll take that.
Yeah. Look, it's a useful tool, right, that we've got on the website. So why not, when it's such a close call, right? To why not make your marginal gains from that? I guess the last question, or one of my final questions on the team before we look at fixtures, Craig, captaincy is obviously on Haaland right now. Any temptation to look elsewhere, or is that just overthinking it?
I haven't given it any thought, but it's one of the consciously, but subconsciously, at some point, we're going to have to start asking ourselves, this mantra we've made of the permacy on Haaland. Then I know plenty have gone for Rashford in this week.
Sure.
In a week which those who've already used it can't really compete. But if you haven't used it already, then for sure Haaland is a no-brainer next week. And after in a double game week, I think the problem is there'll still be maybe 35% of the top.
Yeah.
Says the guy who bought this, and managers
yourself,
who haven't yet to use the TC. So they're going to use it on Haaland this weekend. Yeah. Most of them. Yeah. Those who haven't yet used it.
And that's your advice strategically? You'd say it's a good choice. Throw the triple captaincy on him.
If you haven't yet used the TC in 20 or 22, there's an outside chance, depending on the way the fixtures fall and the way the results fall in the FA Cup, that we'll get a double, which is interesting, which you wouldn't otherwise be using a chip in. Mm-hmm. And in my personal opinion, all the other chips than TC are more valuable than the TC. So get it out of the way. The problem is that right now, City suck ass.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I'm not hugely confident about their chances against Arsenal or whoever the heck it is they're playing. Who's the one?
They've got Villa at home now. I mean, before this weekend, I would have been with you, having watched the Villa game and seen a really energetic and quite impressive, surprisingly impressive Leicester team, take it to them in what was a great game. They weren't outmatched, I think, offensively. They played really well in that game, and I think Wendy is someone I want to talk to the elite managers about in a couple of game weeks' time after they've got through a couple of tough fixtures. Defensively, though, they didn't look good. So I do think, from my perspective, hearing what you said, triple captaincy on Haaland is still definitely viable for that fixture alone, really.
Yeah, for sure. For the first game, yeah. Mm-hmm. For the game, I'm just not particularly Well,
Yeah.
I don't know what to expect with City.
No.
It's as simple as that.
And Mitrovic, a stay of execution for the Forest game. What are your plans with him longer term?
As it is right now, I mean, first of all, if I was to move him for anybody, it would be one of two people. The first one would be, well, three, if I'm being honest.
Okay, talk to me.
The first one was Nketiah.
Yep.
But I made my bed with Udegaard this week, and that's it. So I'm now tripled up with Arsenal, so it can't be him. The next option is Tony. And Tony I like. Tony blanks in 25, and that's one of the bigger issues we have right now. But what about these guys who blank in 25 but could really rock it in the other weeks? And of course, that was kind of in my head about looking forward about, well, Tony could be an option going forwards. And then Tony's blanked in the last two, despite having an XG of 560. I mean, he's really, really screwed up the last few weeks on a stats-based perspective. So, and the third one, going back to the great on stats and not so much on the eye, is despite the fact that they don't seem to be able to hit a cow's ass with a banjo, Darwin's stats for Liverpool are still really comparatively good.
Okay, interesting.
But I've already been burned with him. But just the fact that they may have a double in 25, and if it's not in 25, it probably comes in 26 and 27, and that we don't know about 28, but they probably double in 29.
Still tempted.
Games are games, The more minutes you're on the pitch, the more chance you have of scoring. So
I've got a couple of things to respond. I mean, I love the Tony shout. I was hoping that you'd mention Tony because Brentford as a team, right? I think it's something like unbeaten in 9. Apologies if I've got that wrong, but certainly a really impressive run that they're on form-wise collectively. And, they scored 3 again in their last game. Yes, Tony wasn't there. So I love that pick. Do you worry with Darwin, though, that, Klopp before his really weird press reaction, he was talking about, Jota coming back and Firmino being back in training. Do you think putting aside the form, do you actually think he's a sensible selection minutes-wise as well?
I must confess I haven't really been paying attention to Klopp's
quite right too.
Comments about the other players coming back from injury. And I think those guys coming back are the least of their problems. It was just the fact that, he's been, at least for the last few weeks, since he's been back, nailed because they haven't had the other options. But it doesn't change the fact that if they get a double or two, or if it's clear that they have a 25 double and maybe a 28 and definitely or highly likely a 29, then...
Yeah, I get it, man. The chances he had in that Wolves game.
I can't escape the interest, It's just, but at the same time, I'm not in the least bit tempted to go for Salah.
No.
No. It would be Darwin, or it would be I've forgotten his name. Geordie, who's the new guy?
Oh, Gakpo. Yeah.
Gakpo, of course.
Yeah. But I mean, just Liverpool.
His numbers weren't so bad.
No.
So,
I'm having watched the extended highlights of that game, Craig, as well. Like after the first 12 minutes, which was appalling. I thought Liverpool played pretty well in terms of being an away match, and they created, like you said, a lot of chances, and Darwin was on the end of them. So I get the shout there, and the fixtures, as we're going to get onto now, do help. So it's interesting to know that you've got options for Mitrovic, as I'm sure the viewers watching, a lot of them will own him as well from kind of a legacy pick. But let's take a little look at these fixtures, guys. We've done it onto 2 slides. So the first one show the best fixtures in terms of the fix algorithms projections for the next 6 game weeks. So let's take a little look. Okay, guys, so the way that we've set this up here is for game weeks 23 through game week 28. And I know, Craig, you're going to talk to us a little bit about what game week 29 is going to potentially mean. These are what Fix are recommending. These are the teams to really hone in and target. So the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that Man United are not part of this despite their impressive form. And that is because they do blank in game week 25. But Craig, talk to me about what fantasyfootballfix.com is projecting here. Is there anything that you'd say, well, I don't actually see it that way, or is this kind of influencing your decisions at all? What's leaping out at you from this chart in terms of these upcoming fixtures?
It's an entirely unhelpful comment, but what's leaping me out from me is what's on the next slide. Let's start backwards. 25 is a blank game week, so
we can do that, man.
Teams
keep talking, and I'll bring that up.
Okay.
Now. Yeah. It's okay.
25 is a blank. We've got Manchester, Newcastle, Brentford, and
here we go. Manchester, Newcastle, Brentford, and Brighton.
And Brighton, of course. Brighton, of course, was the 0.15 XG Mitoma. So we have four teams who blank in 25, and that's, on the one hand, it's relatively easy to navigate.
Sure.
I mean, everyone surely can find a plan to get 10 players out with free transfers between now and 25. I don't think that's a challenge. I think there's enough tweets and blogs and podcasts and stuff which have helped with that.
Shows like we have on our own YouTube channel, right? That will help the guys with that.
Including what we have on the YouTube channel. Yeah. But what I find to be the trickier issue, as much for myself as for suggesting to anybody else, is quite clearly, if you go back. Well, actually, stay where you are. Stay right where you are. So we have Brentford and Brighton.
Yeah.
Who in 20? So right now we have a really informed Brighton team with a Mitoma who seems to score every time he hits the ball.
It's incredible, right?
Which is
amazing,
really annoying for anybody who doesn't know him. But anyway, that's just the game.
Yeah.
And either side of the blank, he's got Fulham and West Ham.
Yeah.
And obviously, as anybody who's not yourself or Tom knows, that, home to West Ham,
wonderful
you're
fixture.
rubbing your hands, right?
I mean,
that's a lot of goals there. So if you look at Fulham's fixtures and look at Brentford's fixtures, they are gold either side of the
Brentford with Crystal Palace and Fulham home games as well either side of that blank, and we've just talked about a great form they've been in, and Tony as well.
Yeah. So I mean, as you know, and it was tweeted out by you guys. I had this plan for how to get to 25, but the dilemma I'm having in my head is, okay, what about the rationale for rolling basically with a team of 10 in 25, and sticking with some of these guys from Brighton and Brentford who have these golden fixtures on the other side. I mean, alternatively, you could bring them in on the other side of 25 and 26. Not least of which because there's a pretty good likelihood that Brighton especially are going to double in 26 or 27. But what about Fulham at home? What about Crystal Palace at home for Brentford in 24? So this is the devil at the back of my head who's just saying, am I getting this completely wrong? Do I need to just bet on some different horses altogether? So that's the first issue. The first issue is deal with the blanks. I think the blanks are pretty easy to deal with.
And you think
but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
I see, and that was kind of my question there. So in terms of navigating that blank, your advice is to not be too, I guess, wholesale with changes, and actually piecemeal changes will get you to a state where you can actually roll out a team of 9-10 players pretty comfortably for blank game week 25 without kind of decimating your team, right? Okay, that kind of makes sense.
But then you have 28, right? Yeah. But then you have 28. So if we take, on the same slide, you take Newcastle and United, second to bottom. Yeah. So Newcastle have got Manchester City in 26, and then they have Wolves in 27. Wolves who, leaving aside the Liverpool are just completely crap right now. The Wolves are looking good.
Yeah,
Wolves are playing really good under the new fella. So United are away to Liverpool, which is it's an X factor game.
Sure.
Right? I mean, 26 away to Liverpool. Forget Liverpool's form. That's just an entirely different kind of game. Yeah. So I could quite easily see myself jettisoning Manchester and Newcastle, one or two of their assets in 25, and not worrying about getting them back because they blank in 28. Almost certainly, if you take bookies odds, they're going to blank in 28.
Yeah, so we've got them showing a fixture right now.
I don't mind having them for 26. 27 looks nice, but I don't want them for 28, and I'm not going to use a free hit on that. So I can throw those guys under the bus.
Yeah. So just to be clear to the viewers, obviously we've got fixtures right now on the calendar for 28, but Craig's pointing out that those fixtures could go because of, could become a blank game week in 28, which we will know closer to the time. So Interesting. So you'd be sort of saying there's a chance that you could be removing these Newcastle and Man United players.
Yeah, possibly. And just to add a helpful addendum to that, I mean, we're not going to know that with any degree of certainty until after 25.
Yeah.
So between 25 and 26, you have the FA Cup fifth round, and then we'll know who has won and who was lost and what's the draw, and then we'll have some certainty about 28.
Yeah. So there's a little while. We'll get you back on the show before then, man, so we can revisit this definitely before then. I just want to flick back to the recommended teams, Craig, to bring it sort of closer to home a minute so that we can... A lot of the viewers will be thinking about their plans for game week 23 and 24 before we even reach blank game week 25. So the algorithm obviously, unsurprisingly is favouring Arsenal and Man City with these double. They've then got Villa and Forest before then. Chelsea are a team I think have been kind of curious. They spent billions and billions of pounds in January, can't score for love nor money, but quietly, and it's not just to make fun of you about the Kappa pick, but what do you think about Chelsea as a defensive team under Potter? And actually the likes of Thiago Silva, they've obviously got now Reece James is back into the team, Ben Chilwell's come back into training. Do you think this is something that we as FPL managers could look at and say, actually, Chelsea are a defensive team that we should be picking people up from?
As I'm sure you're perfectly aware, I can think of one person who's been looking at Chelsea assets for the defence from 24 onwards. That's me. I've penciled in, well, before his one more time 59th minute cameo this weekend, I had penciled in Reece James for 24, which was one of the reasons I was looking at Mahrez.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'd looked at Mahrez so I would be able to afford James in 24 because Southampton, okay, I'll take that. Away to Tottenham in 25. There aren't any great fixtures in 25, so I can live a little.
It's a good point. Just looking at the teams on screen there, 25 doesn't look like it's going to be a lot of fun.
No, it's not. It really isn't. That's why I also think that I think if you look at, to bang the drum again, if you look at the projected points in game week 25 from the fantasy football fix projections, it's projected to be a low scoring game. Yeah. So the comparative difference between having 10 and 11 players in that game week isn't going to be it isn't going to be the end of the world, and it sure as hell isn't going to be the same as taking out Keeper for Edison for a hit for the last 3 weeks.
Let it go, man.
So exactly. But I don't think going into 25 with 10 is the end of the world. No. Having said that, I think having 11 is pretty simple, but at least for me, and most teams I've seen, but it's not going to be, by the look of it, a hugely scoring game week. But if you look at the games on the other side of it, go back to Chelsea, right? So then they have Leeds, away to Leicester, and home to Everton in 28, and that's a nailed fixture. Yeah. And okay, we can talk about the Dyche effect and the 4-4-2 masterclass and the rest of it, but I still see Chelsea only improving. I mean, I've Potter's clearly a decent manager.
Of course,
and
good
no
coach,
manager would find it easy to deal with having 25 new players show up, on the transfer deadline. But I don't know how soon he's going to work it out, but there's enough talent in that team for him to find it.
Yeah, I like it, man. A couple of thoughts on that one. I mean, you mentioned Everton there, so obviously we've got one game of information. It's not a lot to go on, and it's unsurprisingly that the fix algorithm is not in love with them yet. Liverpool upcoming for them.
Look at 24.
Yeah, Liverpool away in 23. They got Leeds in game week 24, and then this potential double right in 25 of potentially Villa and Arsenal. Yeah. So, Tarkowski right now at time of recording, I believe, is 4.2 million. The Dyche connection from Burnley. Do you think he's a make weight which we could look at already, Craig, or do we want to hold fire on the Dyche defensive line?
I have no issue with going for Dyche's defenders. Also in a double, I would object is the one word. I don't buy the make weight point of view because, and we've been here before on this podcast, but there's no need to have make weights. The budgets I mean, if you really only have 4.2 for a defender,
Yeah,
then
fine.
from 24 onwards, I mean, look at the screen. It's
Yeah.
3 or 4 nice fixtures. Why wouldn't you go for a Sean Dyche defender
Yeah.
with blue fixtures from 24 onwards? Fine. But most of us don't actually have an overriding need to save 0.1 or 0.2 here or there with the way the players are priced this season. So if it's for the budget's sake, then no. But it's hard to argue with the fact that a Sean Dyche defender nailed on, who's a set piece threat from 24 to 27.
With a potential,
It's crossed my mind
with a
since this
potential
weekend.
double in,
I have to admit.
a potential and double in 25. And look, I know we said last time we had you on the show as well, Craig, about keeping faith with Harry Kane and being set for this lovely run here as well that he's got. And you know, hopefully we'll see this immense season he's having. It's not really quietly, is it? But he's just having another great season, and I'm sure he's in your team to stay. And just a quick plug, actually, guys, and plug is the key word there. The plug-in for the Google Chrome extension that we've got for the FPL site, which allows you to get loads of different content from Fantasy Football Fix pulled into that site, is really something which I'd recommend in terms of planning out and looking at these fixtures as we go into this busy period of blanks and doubles and all kinds of nonsense for us to navigate. Craig, look, it's been a pleasure. I could carry on and on and on talking, and I'm really tempted to, but I've kept you already. But is there anything else that you wanted to bring up, both in terms of these fixtures or in terms of chip usage? I know off camera you did mention that Game Week 29 is looming. What were your thoughts around that?
2 things. 1, 29 has the potential, as it looks right now, to be the biggest dull game week of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been, you know, everyone follows the same people, or at least they should. You know, Ben Crellin and
what a man.
James from Planet FPL have some good content about the fixtures and the transfer algorithm, I think they're called, on Mickle something on Twitter. More than well worth a follow. But 29's looking quite big, actually. And 29, depending on how the FA Cup games go, may land in such a way that you can navigate 28 and then roll into 29 in a way where you bench boost without, as we normally do, having to wildcard in advance. Normally we wildcard to get ready for the bench boost, but there's a chance that 29 rolls in such a way that you can bench boost in 29 without having to get prepared for it. But we won't know till the 5th round, which is between 25 and 26. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say, and I'm really, really not saying this to make you and Tom happy the rest of it, but this, 2 things. 1, this is my favorite time of the season.
Damn right. Love it. Beautiful time.
I love all this fixture bullshit where you're trying to work out who goes where and putting the Lego pieces into the right combination. But for all the, I mean, you know me, I work with Post-it notes and an old-fashioned
good man
right here,
yeah, man.
Pen and paper. But you can't beat an algorithm to give you a second opinion.
Sure thing.
So with the blanks falling and free transfers being so precious, then every time I'm having an idea, I'm running it through the fix algorithm to just double check, is there something I've missed?
Absolutely.
Because once you start putting blanks and doubles and potential blanks and potential doubles into the mix, there are so many variables, it's insane.
There really are.
And the human mind struggles to keep up. And I really think this is, if you're going to spend a few quid at any time of the year, this is the month. I know you haven't asked me to say this, and neither has your buddy Tom, but this is the one time of the year where it's worth a bit of help.
Yeah.
I've always, for quite a few years,
I've
had this. It's too complicated. You just can't do the math.
And look, I mean, we didn't put you up to that, and for what it's worth, I completely agree with you. A lot of the stuff we have on fantasyfootballfix.com is free, but the paid subscription as well is going to give you that edge above and beyond. So, yeah, thanks for that, man. I'm glad the tools are helping you, and I'm hoping that they help all of the viewers as well. And again, just a quick shout for the plugin. If you do use Google Chrome, then the extension is available as well, and you can see all of those fixtures for your players show up on screen. You can plan your prospective transfers in a really clear, crisp concise way that can help you unravel the madness in the way that Craig's described. Anyway, look, man, I'm going to let you get going. I'm going to thank you so much for coming on again. We'll get you back on soon, Craig. We're going to find out whether or not Edison's still in the team or whether or not he's been jettisoned. But it's been so much fun to talk to you as ever. It's been great to get your thoughts. Guys, do please let Craig know what you think of his plans, what you think of his team. Is Kepa going to outscore Edison in 23? We shall see. And do please smash a like on a video on your way out. Do please subscribe to fantasyfootballfix.com and to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel. We've got lots more to come. And I will see you next week for another Meet the Elite team reveal. Until then, have a very good week. Goodbye.